to join a press conference, not dissimilar to this, and express himself by simply asking a question, and was handcuffed, was thrown down to the ground in the United States Center. And anyone that knows Alex Padilla knows one thing about Alex Padilla. He's one of the most mild-mannered, decent people you'll meet. And that's not, don't just take my word for it. Folks on the other side of the aisle would acknowledge that. I thought it was a disgrace. I want to make this clear. The National Guard will come back under my authority by noon tomorrow. The National Guard will be redeployed to what they were doing before Donald Trump commandeered them. The National Guard will go back to border security, working on counter-drug enforcement and fentanyl enforcement, which they were taken off by Donald Trump. The National Guard will go back to working on what we refer to as the rattlesnake teams, doing vegetation and forest management, which Donald Trump took them off in preparation for wildfire season. The National Guard, men and women, will go back to their day jobs, which include law enforcement, that he took them off the job. Just want you to all absorb what I just said. By the way, you don't have to absorb it. You'll have an opportunity to review that in the 36-page order from Justice Breyer that laid that out. And they'll come back under the rightful command of the governor of the state of California. Do it peacefully. It's a vulgar display. It's the kind of thing you see Kim Jong-un, you see it Putin, you see it with dictators around the world that are weak and just want to demonstrate strength. Weakness masquerading as strength. To fet the dear leader on his birthday, what an embarrassment. Honestly, that's about as small as it gets. How weak do you have to be to commandeer the military to fet you on your birthday in a vulgar display of weakness? That's Donald Trump.
Governor, you warned other states in your address the other night. What are the messages and conversations you've been having with those blue state leaders?
Well, these governors have all been waiting for this decision. I haven't had a chance to talk to any governors. And by the way, every Republican governor. I remember one of them by the name of Kristi Noem, who just a few months ago was on there with one of the spokespeople for the Trump administration, Sean Hannity, and was going on and on and on about a rumor that somehow former President Biden was going to federalize her national troop. And she stood there talking about freedom and federalism, the 10th Amendment. And here she is, her folks throwing the United States Senator from the great state of California on the ground and handcuffing him in his office building in 2025.
Governor, what about the Marines? Were you disappointed that Judge Breyer didn't address that issue? Is that something that you expected to develop?
Well, there's been a lot of rhetoric from Pete Hegseth, that's his name, that they've quote-unquote been deployed, but it doesn't appear they have been. But they were making you believe that. And so I think the judge was waiting for the evidence that they actually have been deployed into Los Angeles, which they appear not to be. Of course, they're not coordinating with anybody on this. So he's just waiting for that evidence. Obviously, they moved to another location for training exercises. But here's the bottom line. The police do policing. Military, it's for the battlefield. The idea that these unbelievably brave young men and women that I work with, that we have had the benefit of their extraordinary contribution all across this state. I gave you 3 examples. What more evidence do we need of the work they did during the wildfires in Los Angeles and all the work they did to secure locations and keep property and personal lives safe over the course of the last few months? These folks are now being commandeered to do ice raids. You've seen the photographs. That ends tomorrow at noon. And the notion that the United States active duty Marines, these heroes would be used to militarize the streets of an American city is an abomination. Founding fathers did not live and die to see that happen in this country for no reason whatsoever than vanity, theater, to instill fear, to incite a response. So I'm very hopeful this order puts that in perspective, and hopefully Donald Trump will immediately back down. The courts have ruled on the guard. They will be back under my command, and he'll be relieved. Donald Trump will be relieved of his command at noon tomorrow. Of course.
Has this situation changed your dynamic with
No, because I will work with anyone to advance the interests of 40 million Americans that I happen to represent here in California. And so I've always maintained an open hand, not a closed fist. But I also am going to stand firm and tall and push back against lawlessness, against someone that does not believe in the rule of law, does not believe in constraints, does not believe in the Constitution, who is threatening judges, that threatens not to abide by orders, and Donald Trump better abide by these orders, or we have a constitutional crisis, likes of which we haven't seen in our lifetime. Well, that will be determined by fate and future, but also fundamentally by whatever decision he makes. That's how things break down. It's a federal judge with a federal order. Period, full stop. It's the rule of law. These are the foundational principles of a constitutional democracy. He must work under the constraints as a constitutional officer of the Constitution of the United States of America. That's what this court order demands of the President of the United States. He is not a monarch, he is not a king, and he should stop acting like one.
Governor, when's the last time you spoke to the president?
I spoke to him on Friday night. He had a mysterious conversation with me 3 days later. You can't even make this stuff up. Oh, I would love to share the readout, but I revere the office of presidency, so I'll keep it in confidence. He has quite literally made up components of that conversation. He's been a stone-cold liar about what he said we talked about. He never discussed the National Guard, period, full stop. I would love to share with you what he actually talked about. That would send shivers up your spine.
Attorneys for the government those days seem to imply that Friday's call, that you might have been aware that this was coming, or can you confirm whether or not you knew that this was coming and this order was coming?
Of course not. Yeah, no, absolutely not. We were back and forth with Susie Wiles as chief of staff, and then mayor of Los Angeles, saw a missed call from the president, called him back. I actually texted him back, you want full disclosure, and he called me right back. We discussed for a nanosecond Los Angeles, and he immediately zigged and zagged into 7 or 8 other topics, some extraordinarily familiar and some extraordinarily remarkable, considering the world we're living in.
So how did you find out?
I learned about it when I saw some tweet about Governor Newsom, a nickname, by the way, that's hardly original. There was an 8th grader on Baltimore Street in Corte Madera that used to call me that. And the reference to the National Guard being commandeered in that same tweet. That's how I learned about it.
Governor, are you confident this ruling will stand on appeal, especially if it gets to the Supreme Court?
Well, I'm confident in the rule of law. I'm confident in the Constitution of the United States. I'm confident in the wisdom and judgment of a very well-respected federal judge. And I'm confident on the basis of the review of the 36 pages, absolutely, it will stand.
Governor, does this order go even further than you expected? I think your attorneys had asked for them to simply be restricted to federal buildings.
I'll just say we're extraordinarily pleased by the 36-page ruling of Justice Breyer.
Can you speak to some of the journalists about some of the journalists in LA who
Well, there's two investigations. The one we initiated with the California Highway Patrol, and there's one that has been initiated independent by the LAPD. And people should feel safe. Reporters absolutely should feel safe. And we'll get to the bottom of it. I don't want to prejudge, but I'm concerned about them. That's why we advanced the investigations.
Governor, today in San Francisco, immigration attorneys tell us that there were 3 additional folks who were detained while heading into the ICE court offices on
Yeah.
Sansom. This is some of just many detentions we've seen at courthouses and immigration offices in the Bay Area, around the state. And many of these people, their attorneys are telling us they've complicated technical cases. What are your thoughts about seeing these detentions occurring in your communities around California?
Well, he's on, let's just dispense. This is not about criminals. If it's about criminals, got no beef with me. We want to secure our border. We need comprehensive immigration reform. We need a pathway to citizenship for people being here 10, 15, 20 years, contributing, paying their taxes, being remarkable members of our community. But that's not what this is about. I was in Oxnard, California, and Ventura County yesterday, met with 3 people directly impacted by indiscriminate raids. I met a 12-year-old boy in 6th grade, weeping, crying, tears pouring down his face. His mother and father were both detained. They disappeared. He has no brothers, no sisters, no family. He quite literally is on his own, abandoned. That's Donald Trump's America. 20-plus years, his mom and dad working in the same fields, doing the same packing and shipping. 20-plus years. They've disappeared. 12-year-old boy. You saw the images of ICE officers running through strawberry fields, CBP helicopters above. I met a woman, a single mother, who was walking out at 5:45 a.m. to get in her car. 7 agents surrounded her. They took her in a car, in essence kidnapping her, driving her around for almost 2 hours until she finally convinced the agent, because she has 3 young children, a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 8-year-old, that they needed to get to school, and there's no one to help them get to school. She was finally allowed to call her oldest daughter, who was interrogated by the agent and threatened. And they threatened her after they dropped her off, said, "We may be back." Terrorizing this single mother. No criminal record, no criminal background. I met another young woman whose husband has quite literally disappeared. No criminal record. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't even know what happened. That was just yesterday. That's Donald Trump's America. Agricultural workers. Think about that when you have dinner tonight. Think about when you enjoy your first course. Have some fresh fruit, some fresh vegetables. Who provided those? Who supported you in that? Think about it when you go home and the construction around your property. Or maybe you're getting a remodel. Who's doing that work? Destroying not only the foundations of our democracy, the best, again, of the Roman Republic and Greek democracy, but now our economy is at risk because of the recklessness and the cruelty of Donald Trump, the indiscriminate cruelty of Donald Trump. Why else do you go to a 7-Eleven? Why else do you go to a nail salon? Why else do you just randomly show up in front of a hardware store? Why else? It's not about criminals. That's about creating chaos. And I do not believe the American people, the majority of the American people, support that. Quite the contrary. And so this decision was important because it's about constraints, it's about limits, it's about our democracy. And that's why we're very grateful by the order.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, I think the courts will. I think look, I'm counting on these separations of power. It's the co-equal branches of government. Co-equal, Mr. President, branches of government. He's eliminated one, or they eliminated themselves. That's called Congress. Speaker Johnson, who his eloquence was elevated when he called to, quote unquote, tar and feather the governor of California. That's the speaker. Very religious man. I guess that's the spirit. word, the Lord, he's abdicated any oversight and responsibility over the President of the United States. There's one branch remaining, and that's the judicial branch. So my response to you is we count on the judicial branch. But there's also, as I said, I ended that speech 48 hours ago, I said there's the most important office, and that's office of citizen. That's all of you. Stepping up, stepping in, and sharing your passion with action. Pushing back against this peacefully, and sharing your voice. And I think this weekend there will be millions and millions of Americans rightfully expressing their outrage, their constitutionally protected right to assemble and free speech, peacefully expressing that all across this country. I pray that's the case.
Governor, I know you said that you don't want to talk about the conversation you had with the president, but are there any details that you can tell us about?
No, not at this moment.
What do you make of the president today coming out and saying he wants to protect California farm workers from deportation, given what you...
This is what he does. He creates a problem, and then he tries to be a hero in his own Marvel movie. Did it on fill in a blank on almost every topic, creates the problem, and then tries to do a make-believe as if you're all perfect little sheep, and you're going to go on with it to be the hero in his own Marvel movie. He initiated those raids. He significantly increased the scale and scope of those raids. That's why he wants the National Guard. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of guardsmen and women now being dispersed everywhere, sprinter vans, unmarked, people with masks, running in, rolling over, some case running into cars, 6-month-old kid, a 3-year-old child in the back of the car, left. So, spare me, Mr. President, that he's sincere on it. But if he is, that happened because of you. It happened because of the American people, because they stood up. And that should give us some optimism. Thank you all very, very much.